Hi everyone and warmly welcome to this video. Today I want to talk about how to maneuver a recession, and I think if we can learn how to go through recessions more effectively, we will have a smoother ride in life, in our economic life, in our work life, because throughout history we tend to see recessions every 10 to 15 years. But most people tend to forget about that they will come, so they don't plan for them in advance, and they are not very well prepared for how to maneuver them when they come, or even take advantage of them. So I think it can be interesting looking at how to best use this time together to investigate previous recessions and how we can best utilize them. I think the first recession one experiences is the most painful, because then we don't have any other reference point. We simply only know that life is good and money keeps flowing in and everyone is happy and the economy is booming. And if we can learn from this first recession, we can then continue using this knowledge into the second ones. So my first recession was 2000, in the Lehman collapse, 2008-2009, and that was a very painful experience because I was just I think 19 years old, something like this, and was just about to enter the job market, so as many other millennials also did. So that was quite a painful experience. And I think then, when I had not seen a recession before, and starting out with a small business or doing my own things, then you will wake up feeling sorry for yourself. You think everything is wrong with what you're doing, that no one wants to do business with you, and so on. So, but the second time around, when this happened in 2020 to 22, when the COVID hit, then I had more knowledge about this. So that time around, when the recession came, then it was easier to see where those thoughts come from, where those emotions come from, and that they will pass. It's just temporary. It's just a bad weather that happens to fill the clouds that will eventually pass. And what happens in a recession is that the economy freezes up the liquidity in the market, so people stop spending money, or they don't spend them as they used to. So for small and middle-sized companies, it can mean that they lose most of their customers, or customers start to postpone their purchases, or they go to a low-cost producer instead. So there's a huge shift in how the cash flow is flowing in the market. Warren Buffett, he says that it's only when the tide goes out you see he was swimming naked. And what he means by this is that during recessions you only see who has been over leveraged, who has had too much loan and relied too much on debt. And it's during the recessions you see who they are, because they will have the most trouble, and they will be when the economic system is reset, leverage is cleaned out of the system, they will be the most hurt. And this is what Ray Dalio, he talks about, the deleveraging, when the leverage needs to be washed out of the system, so for the system to be reset. And I think it's important to keep a memory somewhere stored of how a recession is. I read in one book about the wealthiest families in Sweden, that they survived because they always had some memory of the Great Depression. And for me, when the Swedish economy was in a huge boom after that recession, and up until 2020, when there was a huge boom in the market, and with 0% interest rates, and money was flowing freely, people could borrow money to invest or to buy much people were doing, according to me, stupid things with money. They were buying too expensive houses, apartments, and they were using their apartment or house as a to take out cash. They refinanced it and took out bigger loans on it to use to spend. So, but during this time, I thought that was absolutely crazy. So during this time, I was actually renting rooms and cooked my food at home and lived a quite modest lifestyle. Because I tried to still have that memory of how it was when 2008, 2009 hit. So and knowing that can always come back. And while I'm recording this, Sweden is in a recession. And I want to take the opportunity to see how one best can spend the time when the economy is in a recession, and how to both for others if you're interested in trying these things, but also for myself to remind myself of what are the most important things to think about now when everything changes. Because it is more, for example, for all my friends who run businesses, it is much more difficult right now. I see many companies go bankrupt, and my friends who have businesses, they're really struggling at the moment. The rules of the game has changed, so now there's a new set of rules. So this is both for me to remind myself of these new rules and for anyone else who's interested. So the first point is that recessions are the best time to invest. Why? Well, because now everything is on sale. Stocks, parts of businesses, assets are on sale because there's less money in the market. People have less money to spend on these assets, and people are usually terrified, and everyone says this is the worst time to invest. But there's a saying by Baron Rothschild: buy when there's blood on the streets, even if the blood is your own. And what he's saying is that the best time to go out to invest and employ your capital or your money is when there's a really panic in the markets, when the stock market has plummeted, or assets in your sector, and people are really scared of the stock market. That is the best time to invest, even if you're really hurt yourself, even if your business is doing really poorly, or your previous investments, your shares have gone down. This is the best time to employ capital. But it's very difficult to do because your whole system will actually say that your body will say that now it's the worst time to buy, but then it's actually the best time to buy. Let's talk about farmland. If you have been interested into buying farmland, and suddenly the price has gone down 50%, has that type of asset become more risky or less risky by this? I think Warren Buffett has some story about this, that he was looking into farmland and then suddenly it has risen to insane levels, the price, and suddenly it crashed. And everyone else was saying that, it's too risky going into farmland now, but he thought, okay, if the price is much cheaper, why now it actually is a lower risk investment. So then he went in to buy a farm. So if we look at that, if you have X amount of dollars to invest, and suddenly the price of the farmland has gone down to 50%, well, then you get 50% more, you get 100% more, for your investment. You get double the farmland than what you initially thought. That's great, but what is the long-term consequences of that? That means that the crops that this farmland produces, you will be able each year to get double the amount of crops, double the value from this investment than you initially thought. These crops, dividends of the crops, you could sell, and then you could use this to buy even more farmland. So you see how the compounding of this investment becomes much better. The financials of this investment becomes much better just because you had a lower price in the beginning. So you got twice the amount of farmland in the beginning than you planned for. So the same is for if you're looking to buy an apartment building, for example, and suddenly the the price drops to 50%. Well, then you can suddenly buy 2 apartment buildings for the same amount of money. Rent out to twice as many tenants, have twice the income each month from the tenants, from the rents. So many people will be tempted to stop buying if you have an automated plan, for example, to buy shares in these companies or an index fund each month. And I've done this mistake myself, that when the market is going down, that, now it feels too risky, I don't even want to go into my bank account or go into my investment account, and I stop the payments, stop the monthly investments. That's the worst thing you can do, because that is actually the best time to invest. Even though if your previous investment is on red, maybe that's lower than what you paid for it. Well, I usually say that money is now on holiday. It will come back in a few years, the value. But in the meantime, I need to deploy new capital in these investments, because this is a great opportunity. Number 2 is make sure that you have a surplus to invest during a recession. And this might be difficult because maybe you get laid off from your job, maybe your business is not doing well, and there's so many reasons why you can say that you don't have any money to spend because the interest rate has gone up and your payments have gone up on your house or electricity bill and everything. But usually we can forecast that will happen during a recession. So how can we plan for that in advance? By keeping these expenses lower. But if we also look at different individuals throughout history, for example, Conrad Hilton, who founded Hilton Hotels, his family was hit during the recession. I think this was before the Great Depression happened, but they did not know what to do, and they were sitting around the dinner table, the family, and he was just a little boy, and he was the one who came up with the idea that they should rent out a couple spare bedrooms as a hostel or as a hotel for travelers. And so that was the first idea of the Conrad hotels, the Hilton hotels. So they made sure to have extra cash coming in, even though it was really bad times, by using creative thinking. You can also see when Warren Buffett was a boy, for example. This was so he was born on the 1930, if I'm not mistaken, and so that was just after the Great Recession hit. So, but he always made sure to have income when he was a little boy. So he had paper routes, so he delivered papers, and he bought these packages of Coca-Cola and sold door to door. So by using creativity, he made sure to have cash during these times. So he started his compounding when he was very, very young, and continued to compound that. He even had a pinball business where he and his friend, there's a funny story, they went around to different barbershops, and they said, we represent Mr. I can't remember the name now, but we represent this business person, and he wants to put a pinball machine in your barbershop, and then we will split the profits with you, and he will take the 50%, and we will be managing it for this business person. And everyone said yes. So they started out with one. They found one broken pinball machine, and Warren's friend, he was good at fixing things, and so he fixed it up, made sure it worked, and they put it in the first barbershop. Then, when they actually had saved up enough, when that had produced enough money to buy another pinball machine, they did the same thing again. So they expanded this small empire, and that was a business that he later sold. So he was very, very creative with money when he was growing up. So, and this was in very tough times. So there's actually not really an excuse not to have money during a recession. We just need to be more creative. For example, if your house has become too expensive, what you could do, you could rent out the house and live in I don't live in the basement yourself and rent out your entire house, for example, to have enough money to go out and buy other assets to invest or like this. Or you could take on a part-time extra job. Or you see, the list is really endless if we just are creative with it, and if we're willing to take this opportunity. So the third thing we could do is expanding our own business by acquisition. So when we wake up each morning and wonder where our next sale will come from, where our next customer will come from, and we know that it's much more tough to do business in this time, even impossible sometimes. Well, if we zoom out a little bit, we also know that most other businesses, or many other businesses, face the same thing at this moment. So, and if we could expand our business by buying up another business who wants to. There might be another business who they think of just shutting down the business or doing something else because it's too tough. And maybe they have built up some kind of platform during this time, some kind of website that generates leads, or that has some kind of value that we could build on, or maybe they have active customers that would be willing to spend money again in a couple of years. That is a valuable list, for example, that we could integrate into our company, and to that would, when the market comes back, when the boom comes back, that would be a huge benefit to expand. So if we start to look around a little bit, we will soon find companies that are in trouble, that maybe we could even get for free. So I want to share one story. I won't say which company it is. And this company in the music industry, they were really hot, and they had gotten a lot of investors, famous investors who invested in their company, and they were speaking at big events and so on, and they were really popular and really hyped up. So, and they were looking for more investors in the next round in their company, and they made a presentation to me, and I think around this time their company was valued at 20 million SEK, so around $2 million for this business. And but I chose not to go in at that time. I was looking at some other type of business in the music industry, but I did not. I chose not to go in because I thought it was a little bit unclear how many percent I would get and so on. So I passed. 2 years after this, I looked through a website with different companies for sale in Sweden, and I saw one description of one company. It wasn't saying the name, but I recognized this must be their company. So I wrote to the founders on Facebook, on Messenger, and sure, it was their company that was for sale. So I asked to have a meeting with them. I met with them in Stockholm, and it turned out that they had, when COVID hit, they had lost most of their revenue, and they had taken a loan by the government. The government gave out loans to many companies to not pay their tax, I think it was the VAT, during those years. And those loans were now due, so now they needed to pay back. And the previous investors, they did not want to come up with new money. So here I was with them, and they now wanted to basically give me this company for free. They wanted me to take over the company. But they looked quite... they were quite desperate because they wanted out. They thought that they had tried everything, and they wanted someone else to take over. So I asked if they could send over all the papers, like the financial statements from the year that they began until today. And so they did. It took a little bit of time. And when I was going through these documents, while I was going through, something happened, and then it took a little bit of time before I started going through them. And I could see that the company was bleeding money from day one. I thought that they were not so efficient with how they spent their money, just because they had gotten money from investors. They spend it like crazy on things that I didn't think was so necessary. And when they needed more money, they got new investors to put in new money into it. But they didn't get the model profitable, and I had some ideas how one could turn that around. While I was going through this, I saw in a business magazine that the company had gone bankrupt already. So they had not managed to pay off their debts and not found investors who wanted to put in more money. So the company was now bankrupt. And it said that one attorney was going to have an auction for the assets of the company. So I look up the attorney. I write to the attorney and say I'm interested in looking at the assets because I really like the website. They had put, I think they had gotten 10 millions before from investors, and so they had quite a great platform and users already. So I said I'm interested, and I followed the bidding, and basically the company went for just a fraction. I don't think I can actually say the number, but it went for a fraction of what it was in the first place. It was not very much money at all, and it was bought by one other company who had bought up one other company like this before, a similar platform like this a couple of years ago, and who want to turn them around and sell them again. So I thought that was quite interesting, and I learned so much from this process, both from having these meetings and being in contact with the founders, and seeing how the company went from this hyped company with investors to just when it got over leveraged, too much debt, in trouble, and willing to sign the company over to me for free just to save the company, and then going bankrupt to someone else buying the website and the assets of the company for a fraction of what it was from the beginning. So you see, there is a possibility to find these things in recessions. So if one wants to expand the business, this is actually the best time to do it, because so many businesses are throwing in the towel. So I have not done this myself yet, but I know that this is the best time to do it, because you can do it much more cheap, for example. So the third thing we can do during a recession is learn from our grandparents. There's something that I've done now during this recession. I spend more time with my grandparents. My grandfather, for example, is 94 and born 1930, so I've seen the recession and the Second World War. Even though Sweden was not part of it, there was not enough food and everything that happened during this time. So it's very interesting to see what we can learn from our grandparents, because they have seen things that we have not seen. They have experienced things that we have not. They have lived much longer. And to me, it's when I spend time with my grandparents, especially my grandfather, it's like so much of my own DNA. So it's almost like I can talk with a 94-year-old version of myself to see how I would experience life from his point of view. I find it very fascinating. And my grandfather, it's almost easier. It has never been as easy to talk with him as it is now, the older he gets. He's totally clear in his mind, very fit. And the older he gets, the more happy and content he becomes with his life. And that's and it's very interesting to have deep conversations with him about these things. So, but for example, when they were growing up, they were using the entire garden in their houses to grow food, because there simply wasn't enough food in Europe. So this summer has been the first one where I have had grown more plants for myself, grown more vegetables. So that has been a really interesting experiment, because I think that one of the biggest benefits of it is the peace of mind that it brings. Like the whole from spring to summer, that in the morning I took one cup of coffee when I woke up, went out to water the plants, to sit among the plants. and do deep thinking, while taking care of the plants. I learned many things about investing by doing this, because I could see from one season of growing food could be a whole lifetime of investing. So for example, the soil I thought was the most important thing. I had places where I had really good soil, and I had other places where the soil was old and did not go so well. So, and the soil can be for me, that is the political climate in which companies can grow. So for example, in my thought, US has the best environment for businesses. Their businesses can grow the best. They have in their culture appreciation for entrepreneurship that no other country has. So they have much better business soil, so to speak, than Europe, who is much more regulation and have VAT, for example. So I talked a little bit about this in another video also. The other one is that when you plant, in the beginning, you cannot really say which plant will have a good harvest this year. That's why it's important to have different type of plants. So this year I had quite a different few types of plants or vegetables. So I ended up having so much tomatoes, many hundred tomatoes I had. But other vegetables did not grow so well. So, and it was impossible to say beforehand which that was going to be, because if you plant early in the season and think, okay, if I plant really early, then it will have a lot of time to grow, and then I will have a bigger harvest. Well, then maybe you get frost, because in the spring maybe the winter is not finished yet. So and then you think, okay, if I put this type of plant who will be very big, then I will have much harvest. But actually, maybe then some the snails come and eat all of those plants or something, and then doesn't happen. So it's important to have different bets, and it's the same with investing. You don't know which will grow to become the biggest. That's why it's important to have different bets. But for me, the soil is the most important thing. We need to plant the plants in the best type of soil, and that's for me. That's why I think the US has has seen the best results the last years. Much better than Sweden, much better than EU, for example, because they have better soil, better climate there for businesses. But even there, then you need to choose different type of plants that you plant, and then you don't know which of these will take off and give the biggest harvest. You don't know which of these businesses will grow the most and give the best dividends. And point number 5 is that recessions are, in my experience, the best times to educate oneself, because when there's an economic boom, then you don't have time. You're just selling or serving your customers. But actually, when a recession hits, it's a great time to educate oneself, because now there's not so much opportunity in the market, and it's more difficult to do things. So if you have thought of re-educate yourself, go back to study, go to university or something to increase the value of yourself, your own most productive asset, which is yourself. Some things that I've done in the past is learning accounting. One of the most important things in business to understand accounting, the language of business. So I've taken private lessons from my accountant, and have one of the most expensive accountants that I could find, who explains in a very good way. So taking lessons from her, got one textbook from university about accounting that explains it in the best way. I'm learning Brazilian Portuguese to speak with my partner's family, sales, investing, weekly planning, leadership, writing, etc. And maybe from an economic standpoint, maybe it's best to learn things that have a value in the marketplace. For example, maybe the accounting or investing or something that you can apply in your business. But if you look at Stephen Covey, he talks about broad learning, broad lifelong learning. So not just things that, for your business, but other things that maybe makes you happy or makes you a more interesting person. Sir John Templeton, for example, in his 20s, he went around and traveled to lots of countries, and this was a time when airplanes were not so common, so he traveled by boat and by train and these things. And his parents actually thought he was dead because he was gone so long. But then he had traveled to so many countries and gotten to know so many new cultures, and that had a huge influence on his way of investing, that he invested in many different countries and not only in the US. That was became his way of investing. So by learning things outside of finance and these things, also more things that you're interested in, or if you like adventure or something, or learn about these things, this can also have a huge impact in what you do. For example, me, when I I learned this lesson from about investing from planting my vegetables, you know. So point number 6 is the importance of keeping cash during a recession. During a recession, cash is king, because no one has it and everyone lacks it. But the one who has it can employ it and put it to work. So during this time, it can be really good to have at least 3 to 6 months of both your private and your business expenses saved up to keep peace of mind. And I know that when I go below a certain number, then I don't have peace of mind. So, and I've been experimenting with what this number is, but I see when it gets too low, the amount of cash in relation to other investments, then it affects my happiness. And you can see what it goes for you. If you look at Warren Buffett's cash reserve, it's $359 billion. So that he has in cash, ready to deploy if the market would crash, so he can buy up more awesome companies, you know. So, and people have asked him, why don't you put this money to work? Why don't you invest it? Because he says, I don't want to rely on the kindness of strangers. I want to be able to, if an opportunity presents itself, I want to be able to buy by myself, you know. I don't want to need to call a bank or call someone else, because then you have more power if you can do it yourself, basically. Also, if something will happen with the businesses that he owns, you know, let's say there's a huge, if a depression will come, for example, and many of the companies don't get any new customers, or the customers stop buying, you know, so he needs to keep them alive for 10, 20 years, you know, then he could do that. So that is why it's so good to have a cash reserve, to be able to pay your rent, or your you know, have all your bills paid for the next few months, so that you're not forced to sell your shares or sell your investments while the prices have plummeted, you know. Or so that brings a cash reserve, brings peace of mind. And it also, some people talk about a war chest, you know, a war chest, so that you're able to go out and deploy and put this money to work during these times, because it is the best time to use your money. The next point relates to outperforming others during a recession. And because if you look at Berkshire Hathaway, it slightly outperforms usually the S&P 500 during recessions. But when there is a boom, it underperforms. So and during booms, then Warren Buffett has been asked many times why Berkshire Hathaway is underperforming the S&P 500. And he quotes, I'm going to read to you here, he quotes a guy called Bill Barton Biggs. He says, a bull market is just like sex. It feels best just before it ends. So, and and Warren Buffett, he knows this. He knows that when the bull market is high and stocks are just going up and up and up, and then people who never have been daring to invest, they see this and then they just jump on. So and then it can go up and up and up, and then until suddenly something happens and someone questions the real value of the asset, or something else happens in the market, and it just crashes, So the market tends to, when it's optimistic, it tends to be over optimistic, or when it's pessimistic, it tends to be over pessimistic. So Warren knows this, so he wants to stay out of these bubbles, because if you can stay out of a bubble, then you will be more on the safe side. So I think Warren, he likes much more buying boring businesses than buying these hot tech stocks, for example. And now when Apple is going up, he has actually sold most of his Apple. And we can do what Richard Koch says, that we can invest most when the market is low. That is much smarter to do than to invest when it's expensive. So to stay out of these bubbles. So one thing that could be great to do is that during a boom, it's great to reap, to go out with not go out with a tablespoon when it rains, but to go out with a big bathtub, to capture this water, to sell, to reap from the market, to gather up cash, because then it's easy to do this. Then not spending this money, but keeping this money. And what do we know happens after an economic boom? Well, there will become a recession. It will come. And then it's actually the best time to put this money to work. So we kind of save up money when the market is booming, and then we put the money to work when the market is going down. So that can be a great cycle to do. And then we can buy up more assets during this time, so when the market comes up again, we can reap even more benefits when the next boom comes. But then you might think, well, Peter, maybe it's not such a good thing to try to time the market. So many people are warning about this. And that is true. It's not smart to try to time the market, because we never know what's going to happen. But I think Warren Buffett is looking at the market like this. I think he looks at it more on a day-to-day basis. So he looks at companies that he's interested in. Maybe he has a list of a few companies he's interested in, and he knows how much. He has studied these deeply. He knows how much profit they produce each year. He has researched the market. What are the opportunities and threats in this market, for example? So he has kind of in his mind a map out of these businesses, and he knows how much he thinks they are valued at, and if they're overvalued or undervalued. Then, if one day several of these, or one of these, would be priced much lower than what he thinks is the value, the intrinsic value of this asset, then he buys it. And it may be that all of these happens at once, and it's a recession. But I don't think he looks at it like that and tries to time the market. He's more looking at it as, wow, now this. If let's say you like this new car, like this new Tesla car or something, and then you go look at it in the window every day and like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. And then one day you see, okay, now the price is 50% off, and then you say, okay, now I buy it this day, and it's only like it's on a Black Friday sale, you wait until that, and then you buy it. I think he sees it more like that, like it's not trying to time the market when it's a recession. I'm going to wait for a recession, then buy. Because sometimes it happens that during a bull market, it can be one of the companies that is interested in maybe plummet for some reason. Maybe they've done some mistake, So I think it's much more individually looking at the prices each day and seeing, okay, now the price is much lower than what I think its value should be valued at. Now I go in and buy it, So I think maybe maybe you say, okay, that's just a slight different way of saying timing the market. But I think it's quite of a big of a difference, because I'm not sitting waiting for a recession, buying then and then hoping that goes up. Because even if a recession, you don't know which companies will be wiped out. So I think it's much more seeing the actual, finding the having the top list of businesses you really like, and following those, continuing to study those, getting to know those, and then if those prices would plummet, then it's a good time to buy. I think that's a much better, smarter way of doing it. So I hope you got something out of this, how to maneuver a recession. And if you have any questions, just feel free to write. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.